I began my journey with Destiny 1 almost 10 years ago now. I've been there through all the ups and downs of the franchise, with Destiny 1 and its rocky launch, and all the progress it made throughout House of Wolves, Taken King, and Rise of Iron. And despite a few hiccups, Destiny 1 was a good game by its final year, and even now it's fun to go back to. Destiny 2 then launched in 2017 and essentially undid all the progress Bungie made with Destiny 1, and they seemingly forgot all of the lessons they learned with the first game. It wouldn't be until Forsaken that Bungie again redeemed the game like they did with the Taken King. However, this is where I feel like Destiny 2 peaked, the Forsaken year. Since then, I feel it's only declined and never fully recovered. Shadowkeep, Beyond Light, Witch Queen, and Lightfall all had a few bright spots with some solid pieces of content and quality of life changes here and there, but the overall core game has only regressed each year post-Forsaken, with core activity content being neglected, the seasonal model staying stagnant, and the cash shop being more and more intrusive to the point of becoming pay to win. Other than a very fun 3-month kick I had during the Witch Queen's year, I've mostly been checked out of the game since the very disappointing launch of Beyond Light. This is a franchise I once adored and spent thousands of hours in, but I've really felt only apathy towards it for the last 3 years. And this is the final expansion, or at least most Destiny fans are treating it that way. This is the end of the 10-year journey since the original game launched in 2014. The Light and Dark Saga is coming to a close. The final shape. Now, like with Lightfall, I went in with no expectations. I paid very little attention to pre-release information and videos. In fact, it wasn't until a few of you replied to one of my tweets on the 3rd of June that I even realized Final Shape was dropping the next day. And once I realized that, I actually became pretty excited to play through it, just to see how it ends. So the next day, I went to work, came home, logged on, and the server problems have never gotten better. In fact, I think they've gotten worse over the years. In fact, I know they have. And even when I was finally able to get in, I was still missing cutscenes in the campaign due to error codes and being disconnected in the middle of missions, even 12 to 15 hours after launch. Now, some will still make excuses for Bungie and defend them for some reason that this happens 10 years later, but really at this point, the server problems should be minimal, not worse than ever. There's really no good excuse for why these server problems have gotten worse and worse each successive year. They had less peak players than with Lightfall, they had a 25-hour downtime to prepare for this, and they still just can't get it right every single year. It's pretty embarrassing. And that's all I'm going to say on the servers for now, but yeah, not a good start. Now let's just focus on the content. There's a lot in Final Shape I'm actually really enjoying and I've been pleasantly surprised by. And I do really want to highlight all of the strengths so far because there really are some big ones. Then, the latter half of the video, I'll move on to my negatives. So first is the campaign. This has easily been one of the best campaigns in the franchise's history. Beautiful environments, decent story beats, dialogue cringe was kept to a minimum, fast-paced action and boss fights. I really enjoyed almost all of it, except the ending so far, but I'll get to that later. But first I want to talk about the gameplay. Most of the missions had a lot of enemies, filled with raid-like mechanics for boss fights. This is something I really appreciated. Campaign story missions have typically been pretty simple and straightforward with the exception of the final mission, but this time around each mission had mechanics very reminiscent of the Vow of the Disciple raid, with a mix of their own new and unique things. Lots of ads that can overwhelm you if you aren't careful, and you need to be fast to really be successful in a few different fights. There were several puzzle-like mechanics added as well to a few missions that weren't tedious but took a couple of seconds to figure out. I really feel like they nailed the mission design this time around from the gameplay side of things. The final mission, Iconoclasm, or the final one I guess we can play for now, was probably the hardest and the one I enjoyed the most. The new strike in the Pale Heart, Liminality, is a pretty good strike. Like the campaign missions, it's fairly long, has a few mechanics, lots of ads, and the final boss was intense. No complaints really about the strike. The Pale Heart itself, the new destination, is pretty damn big, but mainly linear. It's one giant pathway through a combination of pyramid-like architecture, fantastical environments, and areas from our memory. The entrance through the Pale Heart is absolutely incredible right at the start of the game, then it becomes horrifying, and then mesmerizing. How Bungie blended all these areas so seamlessly to produce some of their best work simultaneously should be commended, because it really is damn impressive. The Pale Heart locations are amazing to look at and get lost in. I can see a lot of fan screenshots coming out of these areas. And while I personally would have preferred to have the old tower recreated and used as the main tower again, I didn't mind seeing it in the Pale Heart and having it act as sort of a mini social space within. But I digress. Patrolling the Pale Heart is also better than most destinations, I'd say, in terms of things to do. The destination activity is a bit lengthy, but fairly rewarding and challenging. The lost sectors are pretty good, better than, again, other destinations with some pretty decent story tie-ins. And there's a few collectibles and other smaller activities that have made exploring more rewarding than other destinations. Now there is one pretty big downside to the Pale Heart, and that's that there is no one on the destination. You are all alone unless you invite players to join your party, basically. I don't know why they did this. I think it'd be pretty cool to run into other players in all these iconic old locations, and it just seems weird that this is really the only destination that this has ever happened to. It's never been a thing before. Every destination, without fail, pretty much as far as I can remember, you can run into other players. But not this one? Why? It makes no sense. I just don't get it, Bungie. What the hell? That's pretty dumb. The post-campaign missions and quests are fairly decent, not amazing. They're pretty standard for what we've come to expect. The exotic quest for Still Hunt was especially a bit underwhelming, but a really cool exotic weapon nonetheless. It feels like a bit of a mix between Zen Meteor and Hereafter from Destiny 1 with a Golden Gun twist, which funnily enough I made a video a little over a year ago talking about how cool it would be if Bungie combined these weapons into one and create a new exotic. And I'm not saying Bungie took my idea, but it's just that it's pretty cool that this is very similar to what I had an idea for. I messed around with it in Patrol for a bit, and it's pretty damn cool. The UI got its annual update, overhaul, revamp, whatever you want to call it, and I'd say it's pretty much a net positive. The quest tabs are better organized. You can launch to a location directly from the quest itself, which is really cool. The Pale Heart has a few challenge-based additions in its UI with the Traveler's Blessing Wheel and the Pathfinder challenges, and I like the look and design of these things so far. A few new light supers were added to the game, and so far I've only played the Hunter, and I gotta say I'm not much of a fan of it right now, but maybe I just need to mess around with it some more. The thing I really did like though is Prismatic. Prismatic allows for the mixture of light and dark abilities into one subclass, and right now I'm really enjoying that. Mainly because I can use my Strand Grapple and Freeze Dodge with my arc abilities. That's really all I ever wanted to do, so I'll likely keep things pretty simple in regards to Prismatic, but I do appreciate the complexity of potential options and build crafting with this. I can see my Warlock benefiting the most from Prismatic, but again, I've yet to try it. The soundtrack of the final shape has also been really good. It's very subtle, a bit dark and intense at times, and fantastical and calming at others. It isn't any vanilla Destiny 1, but it's pretty damn good. I mean, overall the visuals and the sound are still absolutely amazing with the final shape, really just continuing the trend for Bungie to almost always deliver in those areas, especially on the visuals this time around. There's a lot of beautiful environments in the final shape. But now I'm going to talk about the negatives, and we're going to start with the story. Now, hold on, I did like certain aspects of the story, but just hear me out here. I know we don't get the final mission for a few more days, but I think there's enough to say about it right now. I really did like some of the character interactions here. The conversations between Cade and Crow, I felt like they really shared some good moments, especially towards the end of the campaign and exotic quest. Cade was much more like his Destiny 1 personality, unlike his overly cartoon, corny vanilla D2 version, so I really appreciated that. Zavala and Ikora had a few decent moments as well, but I honestly stopped caring about them as characters a long time ago. They've become very boring over the years. I really liked some of the dialogue from the Witness and his various followers. I thought they had some very interesting things to say that gives the impression that they regret following the Witness and want to escape his control, and there seems to be this sort of religious undertone in some of the dialogue and the analogies they used. That was pretty awesome. Some of the nostalgic callbacks were appreciated with a bit of reminiscing about old characters and moments from the past. And I feel like there was a decent amount of focus with the narrative.
Oh, it's focused. I haven't, look, oh, it's focused.
This was a very fast-paced story and gameplay experience for the campaign, and I like that. But there still stays a problem with Destiny campaigns that they've always had. We still have few questions answered, and yes, we still have to do the raid and one final mission, but I still can't help but feel underwhelmed a bit. I don't know how I'll feel satisfied or how they're going to wrap it up all nicely in one final mission. It just doesn't seem like there was a big enough of a build-up, which is kind of funny because this has been a 10-year build-up, but I feel like in a few weeks a lot of Destiny players are going to be saying things like, well, I guess that was it. It's over. And kind of not knowing what to do with that. And I know a lot of players aren't really going to bother with the episodes and are looking to ditch the game right after they run the raid a few times. And I get it, that's pretty much where I'm at. I mean, Bungie kind of set up the expansion as the end of a saga, and I don't know how else players would react really. It's not even a bad thing that players are going to be dropping the game, but I feel like it's sort of gone out like it's almost always been. A bit meh, you know? This is the conclusion to the 10-year story. I don't know. It's a good campaign, but end of the saga good? I don't feel that way personally. And yes, again, I know we have one more mission, but do you really think it's going to all wrap up perfectly in one more mission? I just don't feel that way. Now, aside from the narrative, my negatives for Destiny 2 remain to be the same as they have been for the last several years. In Destiny 1, an expansion would add a lot to the core game. 5 to 8 Crucible maps, 4 strikes, and long-term pursuits for the destinations. Massive world loot pool changes, and vendor refreshes. But with Final Shape, like with all recent Destiny 2 expansions, there isn't much added to the core game. In terms of the week-to-week gameplay, there just isn't a lot of new things to do. It really is the same old game. You know, after a couple weeks of running the raid, doing some challenges on the new destination, gathering new exotics, and a few meta legendaries, it's back to the same old thing. The same strikes, a still very lackluster PvP experience in the Crucible, and if you're depressed enough, I guess there's always Gambit to grind power level. Look, there's always going to be players for Destiny 2, and I'm sure there will always be those that will continue to grind old content forever. But I have a feeling that episodes aren't going to be enough to bring players back in the same way that expansions do. And I don't know what Bungie's plans are, but I don't know if episodes are going to be enough long term. But it's possible they could be. With how much they focus on the cash op items, I'm sure they're still going to be able to milk enough money from the remaining player base to remain profitable for at least a little while. But again, really my biggest problems with Destiny 2 are still here, unfortunately. The core game has not evolved enough. The cash shop is still too much of a focus, and while the campaign and destination are pretty good this time around, it still just feels underwhelming. For this to be the end of the saga with only episodes moving forward, or so it seems, just feels a bit sad. And not like nostalgic sad, but just kind of deflating. I don't think it's worth the $50 to hop in right now, and absolutely not worth the $100 for the annual pass. Which it never is, to be honest. And if you really want my recommendation, I would say sit this one out, unless you are some hardcore, diehard, longtime fan of the franchise. And even then, I can't help but feel you'll be let down once the dust settles, kind of like I have been. For now, I'll likely play Final Shape a few more days, just enough to get raid ready, maybe run it once or twice, and then hop on back to Elden Ring to get prepared for Shadow of the Erdtree. Now that is an expansion that costs less than the Final Shape, mind you, and will undoubtedly be bringing something worth sinking hundreds of hours into. I can't think of a more fitting way to title the Final Shape than The Final Scam. Bungie's Final Scam, because at $40 for Shadow of the Erdtree and $50 for Final Shape, that's exactly the title that this expansion deserves. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of the Final Shape so far. And let me know where you think Bungie is going to take things from here into the future.